one of the most meaningful readings that I ever did with a person who's passed on was for a young woman named Darcy, who drove about 40 miles to come to my house in northern Utah for a reading, and she was hoping to hear from her Aunt Edith, who had passed on about 2 months earlier. It was actually very easy to connect with Aunt Edith. I sent out the thought, Aunt Edith for Darcy, send me an identifier, and immediately got the name of the town, Evanston. And when I mentioned that to Darcy, she burst into tears and said, yes, Aunt Edith was born and lived most of her life in Evanston, Wyoming. So I said, go Aunt Edith, send me another one. And the next thing that popped into my mind really didn't make sense to me. And finally I said, Darcy, I just got to tell you what I'm getting, because I don't know what it means. I don't get it. I'm getting the combination of two ideas, car and bunny. And poor thing, she burst into tears again and said, yes, she could remember a time when her son was little and he had a pet bunny rabbit who disappeared and was later found under one of the seats in the car. That was a sad story. So I said, okay, Aunt Edith, we know it's you. Those are fabulous identifiers. But she hit me with another one. I heard the word encephalitis, and I thought, she must be trying to tell me what she died of, but I was skeptical because I don't think anybody in the U.S. or in Evanston, Wyoming probably dies of encephalitis these days. So I hesitated to say it, and instead I said, Darcy, did Aunt Edith or somebody else in the family die of something that was kind of unusual? And she said, well, Aunt Edith died of emphysema. And so I said, that's got to be it. She must be trying to tell me that, but I thought she said encephalitis. Darcy burst into tears for a third time. I felt terrible. And she said, my sister died of encephalitis. I couldn't believe it. It was just the most amazing string of spectacular identifiers in any reading ever. And I said, Aunt Edith, go ahead. What's the message? We know it's you. And what I heard in words, I had an image of her lying in a hospital bed, and I heard in words, they turned off my oxygen. And so I repeated that to Darcy, and Darcy nodded. And I said, so in other words, she was on life support and they withdrew life support. And she said, well, they turned off her oxygen. That's how they did it. And I said, okay, go ahead, Edith. And Aunt Edith proceeded with the most loving expressions of concern and saying, you got to let go of the guilt. It was not your decision to make. It was absolutely the right decision at the time. I was just waiting to be released from my body, and I could have lingered for months, if not years. It was the right decision. I'm fine. I'm doing great. Please let it go. I'm fine. It was the right decision. It was so loving and so touching. And after the reading then, we talked some, and Darcy explained that that's what she had come to the reading hoping to hear. Because when her aunt was in the hospital, Darcy and her parents had gone and visited the aunt in the hospital, and as soon as they left, Aunt Edith's daughter asked the nurse to just slowly turn off the oxygen and let her go. That decision by Edith's daughter had really torn the family apart, with different people thinking it was a blessing, it was absolutely the right thing to do, and others saying, basically, you killed your mother, there's no way she didn't suffer. And so there was terrible bad feeling in the family over it. And now we had Aunt Edith herself saying, it was the right decision, I'm fine. Thank you for setting me free from my body. And that's also a special reading, because it's a good message for other families who are in similar situations to keep in mind as well. So thank you to Aunt Edith.